the Forging Honor podcast. I'm Jonathan George.
And I'm Benjamin Jones. Here at The Forge, we explore what it means to live as Christian men. Along the way, we'll be doing weekly challenges to build character through action. We are by no means experts, just two young Christian men trying to make sense of a wild world.
That's right. We're doing our best to learn and hope you'll join us on the journey. And if you want to get directly involved, go to forginghonor.com to find information on how to join our community.
This is episode 18. Everybody Talks.
Everybody talks. Okay.
Everybody talks. All right, we got okay.
That
so
song
we're
is
young.
kind of inappropriate, actually.
Well, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Did any of your conversations start with a whisper?
Started with. All right, challenge wrap-up time with that intro. Challenges last for, as a reminder, challenges last for 10 days. That's Monday through Friday for 2 weeks. They are simple daily tasks to grow us as men. This previous challenge was to have an intentional or we thought a better word might be deliberate conversation every day. And that's with someone, like even just like 10 minutes, but someone that you're not necessarily like not your family, I guess. Someone you're not just constantly around, but like have that intentional, deliberate conversation with a friend or call up someone that you haven't talked to in a while, something like that. I think I hit 9 of the 10 days. I was looking over the Discord. I did actually record mine this time. I missed this Wednesday. I remember I didn't even leave my house Wednesday. Like I work from home. I didn't even leave my house. The only person I saw was my wife. I called 3 people. None of them picked up. And I was like, well, okay.
You tried.
That's it.
You tried.
What about you, Banjo?
I think this is my best one yet. I think I was 10 for 10.
Congratulations. Round of applause all around. Yay.
Yeah, we should have like a little sound effect when we hit 10. Or like a hammer hitting an anvil or something like that.
I want a gong, like a dong.
But yeah, I did have, so there were some conversations I had that weren't necessarily like, I didn't call somebody up, but it was somebody that I regularly talked to that I had a more deliberate conversation with, where instead of being like, oh, just the regular, how are you doing? It was, look, we need to talk about this thing, or, I want to hear how you're doing in this area.
We need to talk.
We need to talk. Four worst words put together. Never anything good after those. So yeah, I think I played around a little bit with the different kinds of deliberate conversations we had. You and I, of course, if folks haven't listened to it, we had a very deliberate conversation that lasted for way too long.
With audio quality that was intermittent and rough, but it was a fun conversation. Next time we do one of those, we definitely need to up our audio quality.
Yeah. Anyway. So if you want to check out that conversation, and for a little less buttoned up, because we're super buttoned up on this show. I mean, we're very prim and proper.
My hoodie right now. Actually, I am normally wearing a button down at this time. It's just I felt like a hoodie was the move this morning. The air was cool, nice.
Yeah. So check out our bonus episode. JJ, what were the different kinds of conversations that you had this week?
Kind of ran the gamut. Like you, I also had some conversations with folks I see more regularly that I counted as my deliberate conversation. I think one of the main things was, moving, just a basic qualifier, moving beyond, hey, how are you? How are you? Fine. Okay, cool. And into the, but really, how are you? Or asking a question about something that maybe that person's been thinking about and you want to learn more about. Just more to kind of scratch the surface. I think, I don't know what qualifies a deliberate conversation. I think learning more about that person after that conversation probably is a big qualifier. At least that's what it was in my mind. So I called some family members I haven't seen in a while, and I called some friends I haven't seen in a while. And a lot of that just was how have you actually been? How are things in life? Much more but that's deliberate in the sense of like I called them, but like I think if you make a phone call, you're naturally already going to have a deliberate conversation most of the time. So that, which is nice. I don't know how deep it gets. It doesn't necessarily get deep, but it's deliberate. I don't know. What do you think of
Yeah.
that?
Well, I've been thinking about, there's so many different ways that we can have a conversation these days. We can have it over text, we can have it over email, we can have a FaceTime, we can have, whatever it is. We can have any number of. Oh, you messed. Sorry. Sorry.
I
I'm just
messed up.
JJ has this rule. He's drinking the lemon water before he drinks the coffee, and I'm watching him on our little recording video, and I see a mischievous look in his
It
eyes,
was
like.
an accident. I naturally reached for the coffee, and then I realized the moment it hit my mouth, I was like, "Oh no, that's not lemon water." I
It's
still
the
have half
most
a mug of lemon
guilty
water to go.
it's the most guilty expression I've ever seen on
Hey, that'd be a
JJ's
good
face.
challenge though. Like
Not
something before
having
coffee, or
something before coffee, or yeah, or the 90-minute
I don't know.
drink.
Not everyone drinks coffee though, but yeah, I mean something along those lines.
Yeah,
Shake
something
up
like
the
that.
morning routine. Anyway, back to where we were.
There's so many different ways to have a conversation, in our life, that I think it becomes just overwhelming. And if I'm honest, like, there's something about text messages that just don't work for, like, what I would call a deliberate conversation. I mean,
Okay,
they did
yes
in
and
high
no.
school. High school was the pinnacle time, or like early college, pinnacle time for a deliberate conversation over text.
So I wanna stab back at that.
Stab. I'm gonna parry.
I think okay, fine. I think at face value, yes, you are correct that in general, in-person conversation I mean, in-person conversation is just the best.
Or over the I mean, in voice conversations is what
I
I'm
think
thinking of.
in-person is even better than
Oh, for sure,
voice
but at a minimum.
at a minimum. Yes. I think there are definitely levels to the types of conversations you can have. However, I think text, email, etc., offers some major advantages if you are truly having a thought out conversation. A lot of people use text to just kind of fire back memes and blah blah blah. And that's fun. I
Yeah,
have a ton of fun with that.
right,
But if you're sitting down and you want to think through your thoughts, you can write them out in real
right,
time, and you can go back and say, well, you did say this, I did say this. Okay, what does that mean? And I think text, email, Discord, whatever you're using, has that one major advantage. I'm not saying it's the way to conduct any thoughtful long-term conversation. You go on Twitter, especially until recently when they were
X,
very limited.
X.
Or yeah, sorry, it's X, guys. Oh no.
I think
Um,
this is what Prince's friends must have felt like immediately after he changed his name.
yeah,
Like,
they're
they're just
like, it's
calling him Prince.
Prince.
X. It's X.
Um, but up until very recently, when you everyone had short form, now there's long form posts. If you're a premium, or what do they call it, Twitter Blue, which I do like that they've added that because it gets a little more well thought out. But the short form post, like that was not designed at all for any type of
For
deliberate
intelligent
conversation. Yeah,
conversation.
it's just
Yeah,
the opposite. But I think, yeah, texting, there's a time and a place for that. And I have a few friends, you included, where I have had those conversations where it's a little more like, okay, well, we've gone back and forth a little bit here, and you can kind of see the progress of thought and maybe where one of our minds were changed or both or something. I don't know. I think that's
though
cool.
I agree that it's cool. My tendency, maybe this is a personal qualm, but when I have those conversations online, I get very angry almost all of the time. Like, when I can't see the person who I'm trying to debate with, and when things are getting like really intense. Well, it feels like it's getting really intense because I don't have like the I don't I'm making up a term here, facial trust. Like, I can't look at you or I can't
That's a
hear
good term,
you.
though. I mean, it makes sense. I'm
It
sure
may,
some
yeah,
psychologist has a real term for it.
yeah, probably one that works a little bit better. But
Well,
anyway, like, I can't see the nonverbals, and that makes me angry.
that 100%. I've experienced that at work where someone will ask a total normal question, but I interpret it as being passive aggressive because of the
Yeah,
text. Like,
yeah,
and part of it is some folks use different words in their text than I would use.
right.
And so, but like if they use that word in a conversation, it wouldn't even cross my mind. But because they've used it in text or they used a period and they didn't like,
Or they didn't use a
or
period.
they didn't, yeah. And I mean, different generations have different rules for texting, which is
Right.
very interesting. Um, so I'll
Are you
interpret.
the are
I,
you the old man who signs text messages
No, no.
sincerely,
I will
Jonathan
start
George.
if it's someone I haven't texted in a while, I'll say, "Hey, this is Jonathan," just in case they've changed
Yeah.
phones or something.
Hmm.
That's, like, the most I'll do. Otherwise, texting is very informal, right? And then but if someone is, like, every every message starts with, "Hey, Jonathan, thanks," my name, like,
Right.
I'm like, "Okay, wha this is what are you trying to tell me here?" Um, and so that's part of it is I'll misinterpret that stuff, that generational stuff very quickly.
Right.
So unless I know that that person regularly texts that way, which I have some people in my life like that who I've known a long time,
Hmm.
I immediately am like, okay, what are they on about? What's going on? Um, it's much more. You're exactly right. Very easy to interpret emotion incorrectly.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
The advantage that I'm saying it offers though is not the emotion side. It's the if you're arguing facts and logic, then it's very clear cut.
Okay. So, but here's where I'm gonna. Yeah, well, I don't know how much I want to push on this because there's other things that I want to talk about. But I think as much as I love a good argument about facts and logic, and I love a good argument about facts and logic. Um, the the problem with something like a Discord, like, it's one thing if we were like Alexander Hamilton and John Jay, and we're gonna write out essays, and then they're gonna be discussed in the public sphere,
Totally
which those are essays, right? They're thought out, they're re-examined, they're drafted, they're undrafted, redrafted, um, versus something like a Discord post
right.
where you write it out once, maybe you reread it, and then you send it out. And immediately, every time I do that, every single time I do that, I realize that there was something in there that I misspelled, that I quoted wrong, that I said just not quite right, and it reverses my position.
So that's where you
Um,
and I differ. I actually read my Discord messages before I send them. I
but
back
do you
them
get
up with articles. I'm just saying I'm much better at the Discord conversation than
right? I forget you're
I'm
I forget you're a perfect digital native.
right,
That's
right,
my
right.
bad.
A perfect digital native. I don't know about that.
but but I think you do need, and I think it's something that we're lacking more and more, is the humanity in those conversations.
Yes,
Is the I, you and I might disagree over, I don't know, some form of public policy,
right,
but I need to be able to see you in order to have that conversation, because I need to recognize that you're a human being created in the image of God. You're an American. We're both on the same side of this flag, so to speak. And any conversation that we have is for the common
right.
good, and we forget that.
No, that makes sense. I don't disagree with the sentiment of that. I definitely think that there's still a time and a place for the types of conversations that can be had in the um, online sphere, slightly more disconnected.
Yeah. So let me ask us a question that's going to make you very self conscious.
Uh-oh.
Um, what's your what is your conversational style? How do you have a conversation?
Conversational style?
Yeah.
I've never thought about that in my entire life. You've found something better. What is my conversational style?
So I'll start, and then you'll then maybe you have something to play off of.
Okay.
So I was homeschooled. You were homeschooled, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So about
All
round
but
about
1
high school,
year. All but 1
all
year.
but 1 year.
Mm.
So round about high school, especially like senior year, I realized, like, oh, I've got to go to college. I've got to do
Mhm.
these like competitive scholarships. I need to learn how to have a conversation. Like, I need to put some thought into this. I don't necessarily have the social skills that most people
You
do.
thought about how
Um,
to have a conversation.
oh yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
I guess
And so my
sorry, I
Go
don't
ahead.
you go ahead, you go ahead.
No,
I'll
no, no. Go
respond to
ahead.
this. I was gonna say, I guess I have thought about things not to do in a conversation, but that's pretty much it.
Right. Well, so I had a couple of unfortunate tendencies when I was in conversation. I still have many of them. One of which is to quote pop culture references as if everyone in the room knew what I was talking about. Um,
A big
the other
faux
one,
pas. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, the other one is to just start doing stand-up material. Just start go like when I was in high school, my conversational style was stand-up comedian. The problem with that, I got a lot of laughs, but the problem with that is that nobody else participates. It's
Yeah, that's
just
not
me.
conversation.
It's a monologue.
You got
Um,
me monologuing. There, I did what you do.
Yes, it's great. Yeah, it's a great movie. Um, yeah, so I have a monologue, and so one of the pieces of advice that I got going into um, one of the what are they, competitive scholarship weekends in college was be the one in the group that asks the question. Because you'll have in these
Yeah.
scholarship groups, you'll have these groups of people, and the testers or
Right. Right.
whatever will ask the group a question, and generally the idea is everybody talks,
Everybody
um,
talks too much.
yes, and says, "Oh, this is what I think, and this is my opinion, and this is," and so the advice that I got from somebody was be the one who like turns to the person next to you or to the person who hasn't spoken yet and say, "What do you think?" You know, and I thought that was just it was really good advice, and so I started doing it more and more just in everyday conversations in an attempt to yeah, for me in terms of conversational style for me, it's a tennis match where the role of each person is to bring the other person into the conversation, bring the other person back into the conversation.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for some people it's less about that. It's more like fencing, and it's more like this is how I'm going to attack you. This is how I'm going to poke at you, and I'm
Well,
going to
there are
throw.
conversations like that. I mean, we have
Yeah,
conversations like that.
yeah,
There's also a
but
mutual base and understanding already, though.
right, but there's some people where that's like every conversation they go into
Yeah.
is, "Let me poke at this person." Because the 2
Poke the
things that
bear.
you're this is the 2 things that you're doing when you're in a conversation is you're showing the world who you are, and you're learning more about other people,
Mm.
you know? And I think the thing about a deliberate conversation is that when you're having that conversation, that's happening between peers. Um, or it's at least happening between people who have agreed to do it. Do you know what I mean?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Like sometimes I have a
Well,
conversation
not
with
necessarily
someone,
in like I agree to have a deliberate conversation with you in that
right?
sense.
It's not a formal invitation.
You mean like you both um kind of mentally and emotionally volunteered for this.
Right. You both know that you're playing tennis.
Yes.
Like you've had those conversations. I can be a very sarcastic person. And so sometimes I've had conversations with people that are like sideways conversations where the other person is talking to me and I'm kind of just making snide remarks to someone who isn't there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, or even if someone actually is there. I've definitely had conversations where it felt like I was just on the receiving end of like, here's the stuff, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, yes, yep. And then there's someone on the side, maybe I'm actually having a conversation with them, and there's this other person talking to me.
Right.
That has
That's
definitely happened to me.
that's not a deliberate
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
But it's the kind of thing where you also need to be self-aware and say, "Am I that kind of conversationalist? Is this a thing that I do? Do I just jump into these conversations
I
and
need to be
shove
self-aware
all of
about it. You need to be self-aware.
I meant the royal you. I meant the
There's a
self-directed
royal
you.
you. No, no, it's a royal we.
um, yeah. So, what do you think about that? Do you think you have a conversational style? Mine tends to be late night show host. That
So
tends to be
it's
my
shifted that
default.
way. You're saying
Yeah,
now
where it's like,
in your early 20s, mid 20s now.
yeah. Now that I'm mature and
Now
totally
that
grown
I'm
up,
so mature.
but yeah, for me, it's like you've come into my. I like to play the host.
Yeah.
I want to be welcome into my space. Let me learn more about you. Here's a little bit about me. How do I make you feel comfortable? And so I ask a lot of questions. That's my default is ask a question or repeat the last thing that somebody said back to me because then they'll just keep going. It's great.
I guess I don't know about style, but my approach generally has been have a conversation, ask those basic questions, right? The small talk stuff, right? You got to have that, even if you don't like it. Yeah, what's your name? What's your blah blah blah? What's your favorite color? I don't know. Um,
It's a
until
great
you hit
opener.
until like basically, if after about 5 minutes of talking to someone, we haven't found a point of mutual connection where we can both just start engaging.
Hmm.
That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that gear lock, that engage, that moment of cool, we love this thing together and we can talk about it and we can enjoy it. And maybe even better, we have a slight point of disagreement on it. Enough that we both respect it but enough that we both have that slight point of, I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy having conversations with you, because
Hmm.
we can jump in, we can quickly find something we mutually love or want to talk about, and then we can quickly find the one thing we disagree about it, and then we can hash it out, right? And that's what makes a
Yeah.
conversation fun for me anyway. Um, and in my mind, a conversation in that sense is ultimately I want to walk away with knowing more about um, that particular interest that we both share.
So you want to learn more about the interest.
I think maybe so. I think because I think I view conversations that are beyond the small talk anyway as an opportunity to learn something. Um, and maybe that something is just more about the other person. But I want that like if that something is just more about the other person, I want to benefit from that learning in some way, right?
Well,
So maybe
yeah.
maybe there's someone that has run a very successful business.
Hmm.
So in that case, there's less of a here I disagree about how I run my business because I haven't really run businesses
A bit.
before.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's false, but majorly successful businesses, like some people I know anyway. Um, so those in that sense, I'm going to be asking a lot more questions and trying to find out more about that person's life to figure out, okay, what is it about them? Does that make sense?
So, yeah, but I'm going to push it one step
Okay.
further. First off, just a side note, I think the most common expression in our conversations, like if you were going to do like a word cloud, the biggest mutual one would be, it would be either, yeah, see, I don't think so, or I don't know about that. See, that would be like the biggest one that comes up between the two of
mine
us.
mine might be that makes sense, but
Yeah, that would be it. That makes sense. But I hear you, but I disagree. The other thing is, I hear you, but I'm going to go one step farther. For me, it's not so much about. I'm not less interested about learning about the topic. I'm more interested in learning about the person. Um, because whenever somebody talks, they give you a wealth of information about them. Did you do it again? He drank the
no, no,
coffee
I
again.
finished my lemon water and I can have my
Okay.
coffee now. It's been 90
All
minutes since I
right.
got up, so I'm so happy about it. It's a joyous occasion.
Congrat- Congratulations.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad you reached that. Um, no, but I like learning about the person. So one of the things that I try to do is, there are some people who are not interesting when they talk, and
Sad but true.
nobody present at this conversation. But
Ugh.
you get comments, listeners. You can make comments as you choose. Anyway, some people are not interesting when they talk, but I think it's interesting to find out why aren't they interesting? Because I think most people think that they're endlessly interesting.
Well, except some
Case in
people
point.
don't. I've talked to people that are like, I have nothing to contribute. And I feel that way
It's
in
true.
some conversations, but I think that's like individual conversations. I feel like everyone has some domain in which they may not
Right.
be an expert yet.
But
I don't
they
know, but they love something about that domain and they would love
right.
to talk about it.
And
And
so
if you can
finding
find
that
that,
thing. Yeah.
and I guess so maybe the learning of that topic and learning about the person, they're not mutually exclusive, I don't think, Banjo.
No.
I
No,
just
no,
think that
not
the way you get to know someone is you know what you find out what they love and what they love about it. Because just going in and asking, all right, yeah, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? Blah blah blah. Like that list of questions,
not gonna get you anything.
well, it's gonna get you some basic facts about the person,
Right.
right? But it's not gonna get you insights into that person and how they think. Right. So if you meet someone that's truly boring to have a conversation with, which I have met many of those folks, figuring out what they love, asking those questions usually starts with, for me, something like, well, what do you spend your time on? Okay, because whatever they spend their time on is what they love. And the answer, I've had some people, it's like, well, I really enjoy solving math equations. Well, that's just great. um I actually enjoy solving math equations, so that's kind of weird. um but I've met some folks that are that way, where it's just like, there's that awkwardness that comes with that type of personality sometimes, but as soon
Do
as
you
you
have
get
a
them on the subject, they light
they're
up.
off.
And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's still maybe awkward, and I've had conversations with folks who have various speech issues, etc. But
Mhm.
like that doesn't matter if they love what they're talking about. Suddenly, that kind of melts away.
Well, what I love is finding a question that nobody's asked a person yet.
Oh, that's interesting. I like
This is
that.
this is
Ooh.
my favorite thing. So a lot of times, I love movies. I'll ask, what are your top 3 favorite movies? What are the movies you like? And everybody says the same thing. "Oh, you can't make me pick." I can't,
Yeah, yeah.
this, and I'm like, "Okay, fine." So then my follow-up is always, "What are your 3 least favorite movies?
That's a
W
good question.
What
Ooh.
are 3 movies you hate?" And I love asking this question because first off, people go, "Oh, like, I haven't thought of that
That's
before.
an
Let me think
option.
about that." And you can see them, like, jump the track from, like, "Oh, I've always been in this
Mhm.
conversation," to, like, "Oh, wait, I haven't thought about this before." And then within 8 seconds, they have, like, "Oh, well, there's this one movie that I saw
I
that I
have one
just."
movie.
What's the movie that you
I
hate?
hate Pollyanna. I'm
I've never
sorry.
seen Pollyanna.
Pollyanna. I should clarify, some people love that movie. I I don't understand why. I have problems with that film. There are aspects to it I can see why it might be considered a good film. I can't
Mhm.
stand it.
Mine is Captain Fantastic.
I haven't seen that.
I just I really, really don't like that movie, but that's a different
Yeah.
podcast for a different time.
We should definitely do a 3 movies we hate episode.
That would be
A
fun.
bonus episode here.
So anyway, I like asking those questions. I like finding out, like, okay, what's the thing that you haven't thought of yet? I like asking people, like, what's the biggest problem people aren't talking about right now? What's the thing that we
Politics.
we're talking about that. I think
I'm
we got
sorry.
that base covered.
We're not talking about it enough.
um, the other thing is, and this is a little bit of a jumping tracks. Okay, first off, you've seen The Godfather, right?
No.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
sorry. It's been on the list to watch for forever, but
Oh,
it's such a long film that I
how
wanna
can
watch it with someone. I'm like, I haven't found anyone
how
to watch it with me yet, so
how can you be doing a podcast about masculinity and you haven't seen The Godfather?
because, Banjo, I don't believe that you have to have watched The Godfather to be a man.
Well, I hear you, but
You know what, Banjo?
I think I see what you're saying, but I disagree.
Did any of the folks that came before The Godfather, were they men?
Not in as full a way.
You're saying that Teddy Roosevelt was less of a man than you are because
No, 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 I'm saying that Teddy Roosevelt would have been an even better man if he'd seen The Godfather.
oh,
That's all I'm
oh,
saying.
oh.
That's all
Hmm.
I'm saying.
I don't know about that.
Anyway, The Godfather is great. If anyone hasn't seen it, do yourself a favor. Please watch it. We're gonna have to do an episode on that, or I'll write an article if JJ won't watch it.
You can write an
Um,
article.
but there's this great theme that runs throughout the Godfather movies um, of a man is able to control his emotions in the presence of his enemies. You know, there's this classic scene where the gangsters of one side of New York show up and they meet with the gangsters from another side of New York, and they're discussing a new deal that they want to make. And the Godfather, played by Marlon Brando, isn't really saying anything. He's like, nah, I don't really want to go for it. But he's not saying much. And then his oldest son, one of the other gangsters, who's like, he says something like, um, you guys can make a lot of money off of this. And Sonny is like, well, of course we got plenty of money. What are you talking about? And like he flies off the handle, and Marlon Brando, the Godfather, he like shuts him down, and then he turns to the other guys and he says, I, you know, I'm sorry, I overindulged my children, and the feeling that, the sentiment of the scene is, whatever your true feelings are, when the stakes are on the table, you don't show them. There's another movie that I love. I think I've mentioned it before, Glenn Ross, um, where it's about salesmen, really like criminal salesmen who are selling, sorry, JJ, fake real estate. Um,
Oh,
and yeah, I know. Um, but they're total crooks, and they're just basically con men. And Al Pacino is one of the guys doing this, and his sale gets kind of blown apart. Uh, and he turns to the character who kind of ruined it for him, and he says, "You never open your mouth until you know what the shot is." And I love that line And I think about it a lot when I'm having a conversation because there's like some times where somebody is saying something that I'm like, I don't agree with that, but I'm not gonna say it yet because I don't think this is the right time and the right place. And I
Right
wanted
time,
to
right
ask you,
place. Sorry, you go ahead.
well, I was gonna ask you, what do you, is there? Yeah, I think there's this male myth about like we hold on to our emotions, we don't fly off the handle, we shouldn't do this, and it's something that I value a lot. I
Hmm.
really place a high premium on, don't speak until you're sure of the shot.
Right.
But I wanted, is that wrong? Should I be more open? Should I be more
Well,
aggressive?
you know, um, a great author once said, better to remain silent and appear a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.
Well said.
So
Well
I think
said.
that was Twain. Um, and, Proverbs has lots to that effect as far as even someone who keeps silent is considered wise, or even a
Mhm.
fool who keeps silent is considered wise. Um, and that was something uh, I struggled with through high school. Was I always had to say my piece, always. Even
Right.
today, I still feel that need a lot. I've tempered it by how I say my piece. I
Mhm.
think it's better to come in and have a well thought out last word than to have been the one speaking the entire conversation.
Right.
For example, it's better to be asking questions and arrive at your conclusion through those questions. I mean, that's the. Are you familiar with Platonic dialogue,
Or the Socratic method.
Socratic method? Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'm gonna mix those up. It's Socratic method. Why did I think it was Plato?
Well, Plato's writing the Socratic
You're
dialogues,
right.
so
There you go. Um, Funny how that all gets jumbled up after not studying it for a year and a half, 2 years.
but
Uh,
that is my preferred style. I mean, I would
yes,
rather ask question and question and question
and people
and
start to
get to
hate
that
it. They're
point.
like, and that's one thing. Someone that is constantly asking me questions, I'm like, okay, I want to know a little bit about you. I've had
Mhm.
people where I ask them that question, and they immediately like, oh yeah. What about you? Like they won't even give an answer. Like it's almost
Right.
like they're hiding something. It's like that. That's literally how it feels sometimes.
Well,
Um,
that's, to go to the tennis analogy, what you want is a good volley,
yes,
as opposed to question, serve, boom, hits the back of the net, and then serve another question, boom,
right.
hit the back of the
You
net.
want those
It should,
questions to start coming back in a good way
right.
eventually. And some people just refuse. They've latched on to the advice of always be the one asking questions, and they
Mhm.
refuse to let anyone else ask the questions.
Right, right,
Um,
because conversation is an art, it's not a science.
right.
There's brushstrokes, not formulas.
And then there's also, I have some friends. Everybody has that friend who he's always silent, and the moment he opens his mouth, the whole room goes quiet.
Yeah. I
And
have never once in my life been that friend.
right. Well, it's kind of you can do it in your own conversation pretty quickly, pretty easily. Even if you're
Mhm.
around people you've known a long time, you sit in silence for an hour, like that person does, and then you open your mouth, and suddenly everyone's like, "Whoa, he's speaking." Um,
And everybody thinks I'm angry because 'cause I'm
yeah,
only
it's true.
quiet when
Everyone
I'm
thinks I'm
angry.
angry when I'm not talking. Um, Although I've tried to temper that. That said, kind of going back to your question about not showing your emotion in that, and then also the being silent. And there's also a principle in sales about the first one to um, name the price loses.
Right,
Right, that's a big deal. And in my experience, it's true because as soon as the other person knows the court they're operating in, now they have the advantage, right? Or you've shown
you've shown your cards first.
exactly. It's not good.
My other favorite rule in relation to that is if you're having a debate,
Mhm.
the first party to bring up Hitler loses.
That's funny. I haven't heard that one. I have heard. I mean, you have to define your terms. That's a very common thing in debate. Whoever
Mhm.
defines the terms is going to win. So I've had entire debates debating over a term. We don't even
Right,
get to the discussion
right,
um, because both parties know that the entire argument rests on that definition,
right.
which is indicative of if you disagree on that definition, you probably disagree on a lot more. Um,
Did you do debate or anything
I
in high
did.
school?
Yeah, I did. I
Yeah,
did.
me too.
What was I in? I was in STOA, which is. Or were you
Mhm.
NCAA?
I did both.
You did
I
both.
our club switched about halfway through
Oh,
my
interesting.
my
So, what
year.
kind of debates did you do?
I did the team policy debates,
Okay, I
and
did
then
team policy.
I did a lot of speeches.
Did a lot.
Um,
I didn't do very many speeches.
I did, yeah, I did the duo. I forget what the names were. Drama. I did one of the
Interesting.
comedies, and then I did apologetics one year,
Yeah.
which was fun, and I did Mars Hill one year, which I have strong opinions about Mars Hill, and I don't like it, and
Oh,
we can
interesting.
get into that.
I did Mars Hill as well once. That I remember doing it, and I felt kind of miserable doing it. I liked. I did team policy. I also did individual policy, which is fun.
Yeah,
It's team policy in a shorter format. It's just one person. Um, I did Lincoln Douglas a couple times. I mostly did team policy though.
there's about half the audience right now going, "What on earth are they talking
It's
about?"
just different forms of structured debate.
Yeah,
You can dig into what they are. Some have two people, some have one, some have 5 minutes, some are 7 minutes. They're all different.
it's a whole thing.
Anyway, point being, yeah, speech and debate, you go through a lot of this about how to have that conversation. But I think one of the flaws of that, and one of the flaws of all these rules, which is kind of where I'm going with some of this, is it takes away, or if you subscribe to the rules as if they are law, it takes away the organic side of the conversation, and it turns
Hmm.
into, I'm going to beat you down with a hammer because I have an argument and I'm going to win, because that's what speech and debate is, right? It's
Right.
convincing the judge, whoever's listening to your debate, that you are right and the other person is wrong.
Well, I was just thinking about this week because I was watching. I watched the Republican primary debate, and I watched
Are those happening already?
the primaries. Yeah,
Oh,
not general election.
yeah, because that's next year. Anyway, I clearly keep up very well.
Yes, you're well read. Anyway, so as JJ definitely knows, there are 9 primary
I
candidates. There
thought there
were
were like
8.
three.
No, that's for the Democrats. The Democrats have 3.
Oh,
Republicans have yeah,
I can
9.
only name maybe two, maybe
Uh,
4 on the Republican side that I
It's
heard of.
kind of like the Democrats are the DCEU. They have 3 major franchises that kind of are working out for them,
And
and then
then the
The
Republicans.
Republicans are like Marvel. They're just like, we're going to keep cranking them out. One of them's going to work. Um, so
That's
the
funny.
the Republicans,
That is the best analogy for politics I think I've ever heard. That's how it feels.
that is how it feels. Well, Thanos was on a separate channel. Thanos didn't participate in the
Oh,
debates.
wait, that's funny.
Yep,
You're putting him as Thanos.
yep. I think that works. I'm going to stick with that.
He's
Thanos,
purple. Thanos is purple.
it's like the opposite of orange, right? Um,
They are pretty garish together as
yes.
colors go.
But anyway, Thanos went over onto a different channel, didn't participate in the debates. The rest of the Avengers and sundry characters showed up, maybe the Guardians of the Galaxy, showed up to have a
No, I
debate
like sticking with the Marvel villains theme. So you've got
with the Marvel
Thanos, and then you've
villains.
got, I don't know who
So
the other ones
Loki's in the middle.
are. Oh no.
So anyway, no, but they had this debate, and it's one of those things where you're watching it, and especially I think if you've done something like STOA or NCAA, and you have these expectations of this is a debate and this is how this works, it's extremely disappointing um,
You're
because
so
it,
right. You're so
yeah,
right. I came of voting age right before, um, I guess it would have been, Trump was still in office. It was right before Biden, Trump.
Thanos.
Yeah, excuse me. However you want to put it. Well, and then on the DC side, I don't know who he would be. I don't know.
Lex Luthor.
Sure. Actually, a little. He kind of old Lex Luthor. Um, anyway, this is not great political commentary. But I remember sitting there. I'm like, I'm going to be able to vote in this presidential election. Great.
Right.
I'm going to
I'm
watch
gonna
these
pay.
debates. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
Sitting
I'm
here,
gonna
I'm
have a
like,
pro
I
con
am
side.
so disappointed. I don't
Yeah.
even. I
Yeah.
All I want to do is not vote for anyone right now.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing because you're looking at it, and I'm watching these debates, and I'm looking for all the things that you look for when you're watching a debate. You're looking for, this is my
You pulled
argument.
up your STOA list, your NCAA
That's
list. Like, check these
that's right.
boxes. Yeah.
I'm like, I want to see that you're respecting the rules.
Right.
I want to see that you're listening to the other candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see that you're interacting with arguments, and that you're keeping opinions to a minimum. No one can do that. Debating in America is, this is my 3-second 10-word answer, and this is your 3-second 10-word answer, and I'm going to say mine, if I can say mine louder and faster
And more
than you say
times.
yours and more times, then I win the debate, right? It's all about
It's
how. And if you listen to any of the commentary afterwards, it's always, well, yeah, Loki looked great. I thought Hawkeye got in a couple of good punches, and it's like they're trying to do
yeah.
like a boxing commentary, and it's about as well choreographed as a Marvel fight. So.
That was such an insult to everyone involved here.
So, but it's like, but this is what we think a conversation looks like. This is what we think an argument about policy looks like. And what's dangerous now, and I think we mentioned Neil Postman's amusing ourselves to death in our bonus episode. Neil Postman's argument is when we make politics entertaining, this is what we get.
Well,
And
and it has happened. I mean, I think so anyway.
I think it's not surprising that we have someone who was a former reality TV star who was in office. I
Right.
think that's just kind of indicative of where we're at. Um, and it leads to this zero sum game of, well, did you say this? Because if you said this, then you're a bad guy.
Right.
Or did you refuse to say this? Because if you refuse to say this, then you're a bad person.
Hmm.
You know. But again, it gets back to that conversation piece where if it's a tennis match, if I say something wrong, we've done this before, where you, JJ, have said something and then I've responded to it, and you go, whoa, 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 you can't say that. And then I go, what did I say? And you said, well, you said this. And I go, oh, I see why I see how
Right.
that was a mistake. This is what I meant to say, right?
Hmm.
This is the idea, and this is why it was wrong. And then you go, okay, I see what you're getting at. What you said initially was still wrong, but let me respond to the second part of that. That's a lot more nuanced than we're allowed
It's
to
a little
get.
more intelligent, I would hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you're not, this is the first time this is going to be said on the podcast. So, maybe
Oh,
take out a highlighter. I was listening to Jordan Peterson the other day. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was. Dear
Yeah. Hold,
listener.
yeah. Trust me, we're going to get to a whole thing on that, but it'll be an intelligent conversation, and
Okay, that's
it will
good. It
not
won't
be
be a screaming match.
yes. And I think it might be pleasant. We'll see.
We'll see.
Anyway, one of the things that he said that I thought was interesting is, he's talking about the problem of evil and especially in the nuclear age. He was talking about some nuclear anxieties that he had, and he was saying, what does this mean for ethics for us, for everyday
Right.
people? And his argument was essentially that living in the nuclear age in the 21st century means that every single person needs to be excellent in their ethics. That
Mm,
we can't just leave it up to the people who are at the highest level, who have their finger on the trigger,
right.
but but the course of the 21st century has shown us that civilization is dependent upon ordinary citizens. And for it's dependent on ordinary citizens who have well established ethical standards.
That's a very Greek idea.
Right. And so, that's something that I
Well, it's a very
vibe
Western
with.
idea as well. I mean,
Yeah.
well, because it's
John,
very individual. Every individual must
right,
have good ethics.
right. As opposed to every social group,
Right.
you know.
Which that's
Um,
where we've turned a little bit. Where if you now
right.
say, I'm part of this social group, you suddenly have the ethics of that entire group.
And what's interesting is, and this is getting a little far afield, but it's an interesting point, so I want to make it. What's interesting is we talk a lot about American hyper individuality, and I think that's a misnomer. Because
Okay.
I think we're less individualistic than we need to be in America. Because our
Interesting.
I think our individualism, what we call individualism, is actually identifying with the group. The way that we express the way that we
Yes.
express that I'm an individual is, well, I'm a this, I'm a that.
Well,
And I think it robs us of the actual ethical responsibility of doing things.
it's like the teenage kid who says, I'm a rebel, therefore I'm going to do this thing that all the other rebels do.
I'm a rebel, so I'm wearing my Converse shoes and my ripped up jeans. Yeah, well, yeah, you're just like
Every
everybody
kid,
else,
yeah.
But
So,
he's like, no, I'm my own man.
but
You're
we
not.
have that through our society. I do think and this is interesting. One of the markers of kind of later stage civilization is the ability to hold kind of two contrasting ideas in your head
Right.
just without even questioning it.
It's what liberal education allows you to do.
Exactly. Well, you have the idea of, I am part of this community. I have this identity in this community, and I am a hyper individual responsible for all my own blah blah blah. And somehow those two ideas are being held in folks' heads. And I mean, I do this to some extent too. And
Hmm.
and that's part of the Christian walk, I think, is figuring that balance out. But I think it's a balance. It shouldn't be a conflict.
Well, right, because
Does
in
that
the
make sense?
church, absolutely, because the church is this great example where in the church you have the body of Christ. But what is
Yes.
the body of Christ made up
Yes.
of? It's individual believers, right? And the process of that is, this is who you once were,
Right.
and this is who you now are. And what's most important to me in that is, Paul says in Philippians, is to be of one mind.
Right.
And he's not saying be of Paul's mind or be of your
Right.
pastor's mind, be of the mind of Christ.
Mm,
Um, and and that means, we're not going to be a cookie cutter group who,
right.
when you turn 12 you do this, when you turn 14 you do this, when you turn,
Hmm.
instead it's, you have a particular set of limitations, you have a particular set of things,
Hmm.
and within that, how do you live out what Christ has called you to?
Right.
And that's extremely individual, but it has to be done in this community. So Christianity insists upon individuals who live in community, not individuals who are only, that their only identity is the community,
Hmm.
but their identity is in Christ, which
Right.
is different.
Well, it's the great balance of, I have individual responsibility for my own actions. That's very
Hmm.
clear in Scripture.
Hmm.
Also, all of the world's sins are placed on Christ. All of the
Right.
elect's sins are placed on Christ.
Yeah.
So those are two
Radically
ideas you got to
different.
figure out. And the way I think about it is kind of what you just said, in terms of the body, but the way I phrased it in my own mind before is, I as an individual have responsibility over my own life. I have a responsibility to my family, et cetera. Right? I've got things I got to
Hmm.
do, but we're
Hmm.
all working towards the same goal.
Right.
Right? We're all working to become more like Christ. We're all working towards godliness.
And our
And
goal is already accomplished
correct. So
in,
that's
right.
another question, another whole thing about the already and the not yet. But that's a different
Right.
conversation to be had. Um, the point being, I think it's a very Christian thing to wrestle with these issues. But I think when it gets boiled down to, I am part of this identity group, therefore I believe these things. Right? If I
Right.
could boil all of Christianity down to, I'm a Christian, therefore this.
Right.
Um, I don't think that would become an ideology rather than the
Theology.
truth rather than
Yeah.
theology.
Yeah.
Not that all theology is truth, but I do think Christianity is truth. It's the true theology. Anyway.
Well, I think it's something that we need to be aware of, because I think the tendency is to say, Paul says, I think in Galatians, if anyone comes to you preaching any other gospel, even if he's an angel, let him
Right.
be accursed. And I think we got to be really careful about that. We need to be on guard for that in the church. And I think one of the ways that we stay on guard with that is having conversations like this, where we
Absolutely.
say, is that, does this match, right? Does this center hold? And the other thing is, we need to guard the church from um, wolves in sheep's clothing. And
Hmm.
what I don't mean by that is we need to be like keeping out outsiders,
Right.
but
Well, there's a
what I
difference
mean
between
is,
a wolf in sheep's clothing and an actual wolf.
and the biggest thing with that for me is like elders and
Yeah.
pastors who are saying, I'm a Christian and I want to lead, but really are manipulating and taking advantage and
Hmm.
preaching a different gospel. And I think the way that we get to know somebody, and this isn't hard and fast, because manipulators manipulate in all forms, but
Hmm.
we need to know conversations, right? We need to
Right.
have conversations with our leaders, and we need to
Mm.
say, you know, is this true of you? And we need to be able to have conversations with our fellow members of the body of Christ, if only so that we can say, it seems like you're not doing well. It seems
Right.
like you're being taken advantage of. Can we talk about that? We need to be looking out for one another.
Hmm.
Um, and not ruling over one another, but looking out for one another.
Absolutely. And that's where those even short, deliberate conversations come in. It
Hmm.
sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think these are short daily tasks, right? That
Right. You don't have to spend an hour hashing out over everything we've just
yeah,
hashed out. Yeah.
but the conversational element, and I think in person is pretty fundamental to a society. And as the Muppets once said, "Is it a dying art?"
Well, and I think there's a whole nother conversation to be had about the in-person versus online, video versus voice, etc. We don't have time for that right now. But that could be another challenge at some point, working through some of that, because we just specified deliberate conversation with this, just hearing a
Yeah,
voice. What if it was meet in person over
right.
coffee or something?
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
a whole different thing.
Yeah, and that could be an interesting comparison at some point.
Yeah, and maybe one last thing before we wrap up this part of the episode, but um, I mentioned I think Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers, which is a book that he wrote a little while ago now. But one of the things that he was looking at in that book is he was interested in um, not mass shootings, but um, police brutality shootings, or some of these things that kind of triggered a lot of the
Hmm.
riots that we've seen. Um, and he had kind of seen both of the issues where the kind of the stump speeches of, well, it's all the police officers' fault, all, well, it's all the other person's fault, and he found both of these dissatisfying. So he
Right,
started this process of kind of examining the whole thing. And the thing that he started looking at is, in a lot of the cases where things went bad, what ended up happening is that people failed to have a conversation, or they misinterpreted an element of the conversation, and they made an assumption, or they misinterpreted, or they hadn't practiced that skill, and so his plea, his argument at the end of the book was, we need to get better at talking to strangers, because if we start to get some of these skills back that we've lost as a society,
right.
we can bring down some of these tragedies that have really been plaguing us for the last couple of years.
I think he's not wrong. I would have to read the book to have a better analysis, but I think he's not wrong on what you just said.
Yeah, good read. Recommend it.
Very good. On that
Good
case,
conversation.
go have some good conversations with folks you know, or maybe don't know, or folks you haven't talked to in a while. All right, next challenge. As a reminder, challenges last for 10 days. That's Monday through Friday for 2 weeks. They're simple daily tasks to grow us as men. This next one is one that has been, I don't know, it's made the news plenty of times and plenty of folks do it, but it's one that I started trying to do more recently and thought I'd share with the group. And if you haven't done it before, then I'm looking forward to everyone suffering. Um, basically, it's cold water. That's the challenge. Might mean a cold shower, might mean getting an actual ice bath if you have that ability. It might mean, yeah, just getting as much cold water in your bathtub as possible. For me, it has meant I have a nice, very cold creek. It's spring fed, so it's nice and chilly in my backyard. So after my runs, I go get in that. Um, so whatever it means for you, cold water every day. Um, and that's like, I think the one qualification is it's not like your toe in the cold water. It's like get your
It's
body
a
in it.
full body plunge.
Full body, which can be accomplished in the shower. It could be done when you first wake up. It could be done after a workout. But get fully into cold water every day. Uh, yeah, that's it. Very simple. I don't really have a time limit on it. I think just however long your showers last. I do set a timer if I'm just going to be lying in the creek, because otherwise I get too comfortable in there and I'm lying there.
This is a point where you and I disagree.
Yeah. Well, after the first minute, you go totally numb when you're
Yeah,
just lying there. You don't feel anything. And my creek, I can see up, and there's trees and there's birds, and it's just so peaceful.
he's comfortably numb.
Yes, very much so. Like
Yeah,
much of society.
What I will probably do, something I did in high school for a while, I haven't or college, I guess I did in college too. But I like to take a hot shower and then for the last about minute,
Yeah.
go completely cold and then finish up with like a quick like 30 seconds of hot.
Yeah.
And that's a really good, I like seeing how long I can go in the cold water, which is not very long. Um, Ooh, here's a question. Do cryo chambers count? If I want to go get a cryo
Oh,
freeze, can
interesting.
that?
Well, it's not cold water.
It's not cold water, but it is cold.
I've never done a cryo chamber.
Did you not do it with me?
No. You had to do it.
Oh,
You went
I
with
did
your
it a couple
injuries.
of
Yeah, yeah.
times. It's a scene, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things I would definitely try at some point. I have no idea if there are any even near me. I'm sure
I would
someone
think so,
probably.
probably. Anyway,
Um,
maybe not this time. Maybe not this challenge.
well, the thing to be watching out for, the things that I get from it are, I mean, do you find it invigorating at all? Or is it something that you would want to continue doing? And then kind of compare if it's something where you're like lying in cold water. I think one of the things that's interesting for me is, yes, I feel very physically good afterwards, but I think there's a mental component too. So that's something I want folks to be thinking about as we do this.
Yeah, and when I've done this before, the reason I've done it is it's a way to find a little bit of micro stress in the day. You know, it's one of those
Mm,
things where it's like,
that's cool.
yeah, it's like, well, I don't want to do this. I don't enjoy doing this. This is difficult for me. And it's just a little thing where it's like, well, I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to do it. And it's a good mental habit to get into because it
Totally.
gives you the strength to do it in other areas.
Yeah, I think this is going to be fun. Again, a lot of folks may have done this. It's been around for, I mean, a very long time. But it's something that we get to do now together. So
It's our turn. This has been the Forging Honor podcast. Music and production is by Elliot George. For more information about what we do or to learn how to get involved, visit our website at forginghonor.com. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to like, subscribe, and give us a rating to bring others into the Forging Honor journey.
on our website, you'll find information on how to do the challenges alongside us, as well as links to the many resources we mentioned in the show.
And we do make a small amount from any purchases you make through our website link, so thank you in advance.
Thanks for taking the time with us today. We hope you'll take up the work alongside us and join us in the task of forging honor. We'll see you next time.